Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're so pleased to have Senator John Edwards with us today. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me, Woody.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Now, I know that you're heading up the War Memorial Commission. Tell us about what you're doing.
I'm currently the chairman of the War Memorial Board, Virginia War Memorial. People don't realize we have a fantastic war memorial here in Richmond overlooking the James River. In recent years, we've expanded it dramatically. The Galante Education Wing that opened up, that was named for Phyllis and Paul Galante, who was also Commissioner of Veteran Services here in Virginia for a while. And that was opened up, I think, in 2010. It's been very successful. And now we're working on opening up a $25 million addition, an education wing, to the War Memorial. With more parking, we hope to expand a lot more visitors to the War Memorial. It's really a special part of Virginia. People forget we got the D-Day Memorial, of course, down in Bedford. We have the Marine Corps Memorial in Quantico, and of course, other things. But the War Memorial in Virginia is designed to honor those veterans of Virginia, Virginians who went to war and died. And we have this Hall of Honor and so forth, Shrine of Honor, of all Virginians who've died in any of the wars that Virginia's been involved in. And in addition, we have the Virginians at War series, where we interview veterans about the battles they've been in from World War II to the present, including the War on Terror, and Vietnam and Korea and so forth. We interview the veterans as they were, of course, older, and then have original footage of the battles they were in. And it's a great program for school children, for anybody actually, this Virginians at War series. So if anybody's interested in finding out about Virginians who served and fought, and many of them died, in wars that Virginia has been involved in, the War Memorial is honoring these people. And I think people would enjoy coming to the War Memorial, and also school children seeing the Virginians at War series. So it's available to the public at large. So
I imagine I could go online and find their website as well.
You absolutely could. And these fantastic Virginians at War series programs, on D-Day, for example, on Iwo Jima, pick a battle. We're talking to Virginians here that were involved in these battles, and with their interviews today or in recent years, plus the original footage of the battles they were in when they were available.
And of course, I believe we've got about a population of 10% total in the state of Virginia in terms of veterans.
Yeah, I've heard figures 740,000 Virginians are veterans, in addition to their families. So Virginia is probably the most veteran-friendly state in the country. I would think so.
Matter of fact, there are a number of programs to promote veterans in terms of those who return from theaters of war, economic development, and those kinds of things.
We have a lot of programs. Virginia values veterans programs to help get jobs. We've had a program to make sure there are no Virginians who are veterans who are homeless. A lot of programs for Virginia veterans. In addition, of course, we have the veterans cemeteries. We have the Virginia Veterans Care Centers. And of course, we have a number of about 70 or so agents who will assist Virginian veterans in applying for their federal VA benefits. That's a very important program that the Virginia Veteran Services Board is doing.
And there's a way for Virginia veterans to get certification in certain occupations as a result of their experience.
We're trying a program like that. I know Senator Kane is working on that as well, to make sure that the veterans who have expertise from being in the military, and a lot of them have great expertise, can translate that into jobs. Yeah.
Roanoke Higher Education Center, I know that's something you're very proud of.
It's been my baby for a long time. I've been chairman of it since we opened up in 2000. And we've made a lot of progress. This past year we had doubled the size of the Culinary Arts Institute. Virginia Western Community College provides a Culinary Arts Institute at the Claude Moore Education Complex. And the Institute has been very successful. We doubled the size of it now with about $6.4 million. In addition, we have a simulation center that is a program for these mannequins where nurses can be trained in dealing with bodies and not use real bodies,
right.
but mannequins. And that we opened that up with Radford University a year ago, and that's been very successful. And we're looking forward now to the main building, location between the main building and the Culinary Arts building. There's a little parking lot. We're going to turn that into a courtyard or a plaza and honor Oliver Hill.
Tell people who Oliver Hill was.
Oliver Hill is probably, along with Spotswood Robinson, is probably the most important civil rights advocate in Virginia's history. He lived in Roanoke for 10 years and then went away to Howard University and Harvard University Law School, came back to Roanoke and practiced law there for a while, and then came to Richmond, practiced law with Spotswood Robinson, who was on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, as you know, and my desk mate Henry Marsh. It was a law firm at one point called Hill, Tucker, and Marsh. And Oliver Hill died just a few years ago at the age of 100. I guess it would have been 07. He was born in 1907, died in 2007. He won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Clinton gave him that back in 1998. I met him once or twice later, of course, in his life. And we have a federal building is named for him here. The building the Lieutenant Governor is in is named after Oliver Hill. And we're naming the courthouse in Roanoke this spring for Oliver Hill. And in addition, we at the Roanoke Higher Education Center, I asked the governor for $328,000 to develop a plaza named for Oliver Hill, right next to where he practiced law in Roanoke. And we're very close to where he used to live. So I think we need in Roanoke to make sure we honor him, but also tell people who he was. The greatest civil rights advocate in Virginia history. He was involved, of course, in the Prince Edward County schools, the case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was part of about 5 cases that became part of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. So he was extremely instrumental in advancing the cause of civil rights in Virginia, and he did so many other things, so many other cases he was involved in. So we hope the plaza will have a kiosk and kind of explain who he was from an educational standpoint. So I think we're very excited about doing this.
Now you mentioned Radford University as part of your district, but of course the other university, which has quite a bit of note throughout the state and the nation,
the
is
one that
Virginia
plays football and basketball too.
The one that plays football and basketball every once in a while.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech. Tell us something about Virginia Tech and how things are going there. It's very exciting.
They're very exciting. In Roanoke too. They now have a School of Medicine in Roanoke, along with Carilion University, Carilion Health Systems, but it's now a school of Virginia Tech, the School of Medicine. In addition, we have the Research Institute with Carilion, but again, it's a Virginia Tech program.
Is that the Brain Research Institute?
The Brain Research, that's right. Neurology, oncology, cardiology. They're doing so much advanced research. They have, I don't know the figures now, patents pending. They have they're publishing in major academic journals. We now have, I think the figures over maybe 500 research scientists, most of them very young people who come from all over the world to live in Roanoke and work in the Research Institute. Dr. Michael Friedlander, has brought these people together. He's just been a genius in terms of bringing this Research Institute together. And we've recently are opening up doubling the size of the Research Institute, I think next September. We hope that'll be done. And that will be incredibly important to both for Tech and for Roanoke and for the advancement of knowledge in the field of neurology and so forth. It's called an innovation district, and by bringing people with similar interests in the field of biology and neurology and so forth, they have cross-pollination of ideas, and that in turn advances innovation in the field of medicine. And so we're very excited about the Research Institute in Roanoke. I think it'll be probably the most important brain research institution, maybe in the country.
And of course, the announcement about Amazon locating in Northern Virginia involves Virginia Tech, does it not?
Absolutely. Without Virginia Tech agreeing to provide a campus in Alexandria, it's unlikely that Amazon would have come. So the two work hand in hand. Amazon, of course, is a high-tech company, but they need to have a graduate program to help educate and continue the education of their employees. So Amazon and Virginia Tech go hand in hand, and we're very excited about that. And tying that together, I've been working on getting Amtrak from Roanoke to Lynchburg. To Roanoke to Christiansburg. We got it from Lynchburg to Roanoke just over a year ago, and that train has been very successful. And we want to make sure it gets to Christiansburg near the Tech campus. So when people go from Tech to Alexandria, it's only a 5-hour drive by train rather than having to fight the traffic.
Now, there was a bus service, too, that was instituted a few years ago.
Well, I got a bus service starting in 2011, which led to bringing Amtrak to Roanoke. It was so successful, and that's why Amtrak decided to come to Roanoke, because we proved that there was a market there. I'm working now on trying to get a bus service from Roanoke to Clifton Forge, because there's an Amtrak train that goes from Charlottesville through Clifton Forge into Charleston, West Virginia, and on to Chicago. And so we hope that'll help Amtrak, but help people in the Roanoke region have access to the Amtrak train in Clifton Forge.
Now, I know you served on the Senate Transportation Committee. What other transportation needs, especially in terms of major highways and byways in your district?
You're talking about I-81?
I-81, I-81. Can't avoid it.
Everybody's got a story about I-81. It is not reliable. You'd be driving along, it's fine, then all of a sudden you stopped. And you don't know why. It could be an accident, it could be, in the Roanoke region, it could be commuter traffic. It's the most unreliable road, I think, in Virginia, and it's important for the state as a whole. It's not just a regional problem, because if you can fix up I-81 and make it more reliable, it helps. It's 95. The only two ways to go north-south in Virginia, 95 or I-81 on an interstate, and when you help one, you help the other. And also, so much traffic, truck traffic, comes up I-81, and so the governor's been pushing to improve I-81, and I have a bill. And my bill is a little different. It does not rely on tolls. Nobody likes tolls. It relies on raising the wholesale tax of gasoline by 5% at the wholesale. They call it the rack, where the big tankers pick up the gasoline. The tankers go everywhere. They go to North Carolina, all over the place. So nobody knows who's paying for that extra 5%. It's a wholesale level. You don't even see it. It's a painless way to raise money, and it can raise $850 million a year. And I'm hoping $300 million to be dedicated to I-81, and we need that money. There's a $4 billion plus in needs for I-81. $2 billion are urgent, and the governor's plan that some other people are pushing, I think Senator Obenshain and maybe a few others, are pushing the idea of a toll. And tolls are inefficient. Nobody likes them, and the trucking industry is threatened to sue because of the inequities in the way tolls are being done. And so I'm hoping we can do it in a way that does not rely on tolls. It just raises the price across the board. It helps everybody throughout the state, because everybody needs money for transportation. What we've done is balkanize Virginia.
Yes.
And nobody thinks it's a good idea. Northern Virginia relies upon the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. They can raise the price of gas, and they have tolls. Hampton Road's the same thing. And everybody complains about the tolls all the time. And I'm hoping we kind of go away from that and talk about Virginia as one Virginia, because everybody benefits when other regions have better transportation. I mean, we have people travel all over the place. In addition, from an economic standpoint, it helps the state to make sure we have roads that are easily passable, and it will get you there. You know, get you there in a timely fashion. When Eisenhower came up with the idea of the interstate highway system in 1956, one of the reasons was to have a free way. The large turnpikes from Chicago to New York all relied upon tolls. Well, people said that is an inefficient way to do it. We need to have an interstate system throughout the country, and the concept was a freeway without tolls. Now we've gone to tolls in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. I'm hoping we can avoid that for 81 and do it the way we have done it in the past. Raise the price across the board, help everybody, but then dedicate an important part of it, $300 million to I-81, which would help improve the I-81 much more quickly than any other method that's out there right now.
The other thing that would help, I assume, would be helping to transit commerce from the Port of Virginia,
right,
for example, because that's a huge economic driver.
Absolutely. The Port of Virginia is golden for Virginia. It's extremely important, and they're deepening in it. It's going to be maybe the biggest port in the eastern part of the United States in a few years. They're bringing these huge Panamax tankers, vessels that hold, I don't know, 12,000 containers, maybe 15, I forget the figure, 15,000 containers. It's gigantic. And what happens is they drop off the containers and they have to go by train or truck. That's it. And they ideally train coming up through toward the western part of the state or up to Front Royal, and have an inland port. I'd like to see an inland port in Western Virginia eventually, and we need to study that. I've been pushing legislation on that as well, but that's going to take a long time. But right now, the best thing is to recognize the need to have better rail transportation, as well as roads for the trucks, as well as individuals.
So it's not only intra-state commerce, but interstate as well.
Absolutely, and transportation is going to become even more important in the future. One reason for internet sales, people are buying things on the internet, and how do they get to your house? By a truck, and that means we need better roads so the trucks and cars can get to your house, and you can drive without having to pay tolls or get caught in a traffic jam.
Of course, you mentioned how things get to people's homes, and of course, Virginia Tech has been instrumental in terms of developing drones, for example. Of course, Amazon is extremely interested in that.
Yeah, and the people don't talk much about the smart road at Virginia Tech and the research that's being done. A lot of it's proprietary research for different automobile manufacturers, and they can't talk about it. But they're doing some amazing research with regard to, electric cars and all sorts of other things at the transportation research in Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a major driver, but also not just a major driver economically. This is where the innovation is coming from, and the future is innovation. It's very exciting to represent my district because between Roanoke and Blacksburg, we're doing an awful lot for the future of Virginia.
Great. Tell us a little bit about the Equal Rights Amendment. I know you were a co-patron on that amendment.
We got it out of the Senate, 26 votes. It's about time. This is the 400th year from the time the House of Burgesses was established. The first women that came here, the first African Americans that came here in 1619. In 2019, 400 years later, it's time to make history again and pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Virginia would be the 38th state to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's about time.
Now, there's these arguments that suggest even if it's passed, it's only symbolic because the date has been far past for approval. There are all these unintended consequences that will occur.
Congress can easily set the date, expand the date. It's done it in the past. You can easily do that, so I'm not worried about that. It is needed. Like my former professor and employer, Antonin Scalia, I worked for him in law school. He said, no, it's not in the U.S. Constitution. And he didn't say this, but I'm saying it's time that it should be in the Constitution.
Right. I know you have some legislation dealing with prescription drugs and gouging. Talk to us about
everybody's worried throughout the country. Everybody's concerned about price gouging on the part of prescription medication and brand medication, as well as generic prescription medication. And what has happened, the prices have gone up dramatically without cause. It's a national problem, and I had a bill last year and again this year to give the Attorney General the authority to issue a subpoena to get records from manufacturers to find out is your price increase justifiable, and then if not, then to take action. The bill has not gone through this year, and so this year I sent it to the Joint Commission on Healthcare, which I serve on, to study because it needs a more in-depth study.
What about the opioid crisis? It's still ongoing, I take it.
Oh, the opioid crisis is a huge problem, and of course this Attorney General filed suit. Some of the localities are filing suit as well. It's just a national crisis. It was totally avoidable and preventable. A lot of the doctors did not realize how dangerous it was, and the prescribed medication not realizing how dangerous it is. The opioids, it affects the brain differently. It rewires the brain in a very short period of time, and people become addicted and can't get away from it. So it's a huge, huge problem.
Now, what about doctor shopping for those patients who are, adept at doing those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think one of the problems has been the doctors were not well educated as to the danger of opioids. They were sold to them on the premise that this is good for people, and it's not going to create a problem. Unfortunately, it is creating huge problems. That's why the lawsuits against the manufacturers have been filed all over the country.
Medicaid expansion is being implemented. I take that.
Medicaid expansion, yeah, beginning January 1, is over up to 400,000 people we think will be covered. They're ahead of schedule, and this is going to make a huge difference in providing not only the fact that people who cannot otherwise afford Medicaid or health insurance are going to get it, people who are the working poor, but also it's going to help everybody, because this should help get the price down, because health insurance costs have gone up, partly because a lot of the cost shifting. The hospitals have to shift the cost from those that are paying to those that are not paying. So if more people are paying, then the cost should stabilize.
And of course, those who don't have medical insurance, who now will have it, will no longer hopefully go to the emergency room where the costs are very high.
That's exactly right. People go to the emergency room now, they can't afford it, they don't have insurance, and the hospitals just have to eat it. And then they sue people who can't afford to pay too.
Right.
So it's hopefully will stabilize the financial situation, but also make sure those working poor will have insurance for the first time.
And of course, you're faced with passing a balance. Well, there's a budget. We're working on the second half of the budget, so to speak, and because the federal government gave a gift to some taxpayers, there's an issue about what the state of Virginia is going to have to do in terms of conformity.
The governor's right. The way it works is depending on how we conform, we need to conform Virginia's law to the state law. Otherwise, it'd be 31 some extra forms that Virginia taxpayers will have to fill out, and they're not going to be happy about that. So we've always conformed. But the governor wants to use some of that extra money to give it back to the working poor under the refundable earned income tax credit. It's hard to explain this, but people making less than, say, $50,000 or $60,000 will actually come out ahead. Those that are making over $100,000 or whatever won't necessarily come out ahead. But the idea is let's the disparity in income in America and in Virginia is a huge problem. So let's help those at the lower end. And they're paying taxes too. They may not pay as much in terms of income taxes, but they're paying sales taxes and everything else. And so this would be a way to help those at the lower end of the income level and help the economy as well.
Now, I understand as a result of a recent Supreme Court decision, there are potentially additional revenues that may come to the state because we can now tax internet sales. Yeah,
the Wayfair case of the U.S. Supreme Court, yes, they redefined what a presence is. They used to be physical presence only, now it's economic presence. It's kind of complicated to explain. But what it means is we should get a few $100,000, $1 million, we think, because we can now tax internet sales that originated from other states. We couldn't do it before, but now we can, and we hopefully that will be additional revenue to Virginia.
What about some of the spending priorities that the governor set forth in his address to the General Assembly? He wants to give teachers an additional pay raise, state employees as well. You think that's a good thing?
It's been needed. We're losing teachers. I've just talked a little while ago to some of the school board members in my district, and one of the problems I hear all the time, teachers are not being paid enough, and they do need to be paid more. Teaching is probably the most important profession we have. This is our future, and we cannot attract and retain quality teachers we're going to be suffering in the long run. So this is very, very important.
And of course, I think he's also talked about and proposed increasing the number of nurses in our schools.
We have a nursing shortage. That's
mental health professionals and other counselors as well.
Yeah, and Radford University just acquired Jefferson College of Health Sciences. They're in the process of doing that, and it's going to be good for everybody. It's their nursing program at the Jefferson College of Health Sciences will now be part of Radford University, and so this will help to provide more nurses. And there is a shortage of nurses throughout the country, and in Virginia too. So this is something we're working on, and Ronald, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, and he wants to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio, which is way out of whack, as I
understand.
Yeah,
we've always been working on smaller class sizes and so forth. We've never quite gotten there. We need more school counselors. There's a whole plethora of things we need to do to improve our schools.
Now, there was just recently media reports concerning redistricting in the House of Delegates. As a result of a federal district court order based upon a map that was drawn by an expert. We're, 3 years away from a congressional redistricting as a result of gerrymandering. There's talk again, as there has been for years, for a nonpartisan commission to draw the lines. How do you think all that's going to come out?
Well, we just reported out of the Privileges and Elections Committee the other day a nonpartisan redistricting plan. So we'll see how that works.
So how would that work, and would it ultimately be binding upon the General Assembly if it's adopted?
Well, what we did was pass a constitutional amendment. We have to change the Constitution. The Constitution gives to the legislature solely the authority to do the redistricting, which has to be done every 10 years, subject, of course, to court approval based on Supreme Court decisions. And recently, the Federal District Court redistricted the congressional districts and also the House of Delegates districts in Virginia, and which means that they weren't done right in the past. And so what we've done today, though, recently, is to have a constitutional amendment to basically give it to a commission to decide how redistricting can work. The General Assembly will have some role to play, but not as much as in the past. But it requires a constitutional amendment to do that.
So that has to pass the Senate, it's got to pass the House.
Right.
Then there has to be an intervening election year.
To get a constitutional amendment, you have to pass 2 times, this year, and then we'll have an election this fall, and then next year as well, and then it becomes law. And no, then it goes to the voters for a referendum to approve it.
We'll give you the last 30 seconds. What will success mean for you in this session?
Well, success will be to improve I-81. This is an urgent problem. It'll also mean success would be making sure we can expand broadband. That's very important. The rural areas, 38% of the people in the rural areas do not have broadband, and without broadband, businesses won't come. Students can't be educated because everybody needs high-speed access to the internet in order to study. Graduate students rely heavily upon the internet and broadband. So that's another thing I've been working on.
Great. Well, thank you for being with us, Senator John Edwards.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I am Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.